My definition of folk art is it's the stuff that we make, do and think for ourselves, and the radical potential of these things. I think the term folk art has become associated in most people's minds with sort of historical practices, things that happened in the past. But my take on that is that, if folk was always the expression of people's kind of creativity and identity, then that drive isn't going to go anywhere. People are always going to be creating folk, participating in folk arts of different kinds, even if they don't use that term folk art to describe what they're doing.
Drag for me is the colour purple because it can be vibrant as well as sensitive, comforting but fun. Sound is like raucous laughter, daring squeals and screams.
What drag smelled like was my mum getting ready for a night out. And that would be in her bedroom, and it was all like, I'm talking back in the 70s, and because to me, my mum, it was almost like she did drag.
What is drag?
What is drag?
Drag to me is any kind of play with gender, and it doesn't have to be something that you don't identify as, which can be done for the sake of critiquing, challenging, exploring, posing questions about how society perceives gender or sexuality. I know what our cultural sort of standards are for gender, and they don't really make sense to me. So drag feels like a good personal practice as well as a performative one, and a play with other people.
Why is drag folk art?
Why is drag folk art?
And why is drag folk art?
In answer to that question, why is drag folk art, I might just read something that I've written about that recently. I consider drag to be a form of folk art because it uses creative and social approaches to share, reflect and care for the cultural and emotional lives of the communities who make it. Despite the recent wild popularity of Drag Race, the majority of live drag performance made in the UK is created by and for small, local DIY groups of predominantly, but not exclusively, LGBTQIA+ people. As well as supporting one another's art making, in my experience these groups also provide vital emotional and practical support. It's the strong interconnectedness of drag communities that really makes drag folk art for me.
Someone once sort of described to me that folk for them was like the performance was the excuse to come together with the people that they loved and with their community to do something. And so often kind of folk arts and customs are so incredibly regionally specific, so incredibly kind of bizarre in lots of different ways, but in a kind of fairly secular society that we don't have all that many excuses just to come together and be with each other and celebrate.
The process and spending time together and making the work is just as important, if not more important, than anything you might end up sharing with a wider audience. I guess that's what folk art is for me, and that's totally what drag is for me as well.
I think that folk is really connected to DIY culture, to world making, to imagination and building those worlds with other people. Usually I see it as quite a collaborative thing, usually, and I kind of see it as like similar to like other movements like punk or things like that. And I also kind of see it as being like quite connected to like other ways of documenting histories or telling stories that are not connected to institutions and like or archives in like a necessarily in like a traditional way. So it's not made for that, is what I'm saying. And it's more to kind of like share with the people around you.
In regards to drag and folk art, another important thing in regards to our like queer community that I've just really valued is just the fact that I'm non-binary. A lot of people don't understand that, and sometimes aggressively don't understand it or aren't able to put in the effort to understand it. But it's the fact that we're able to create art together in performances. We can just hang out. We can just be. Like, finally, we can just be in an area where we're, instead of aggressively being misunderstood, we're positively lifted up and made space for.
I see folk art as a necessity in communities where people come together, and I think the necessity bit started out of like practical things, like we need things, we need bowls, we need cups, we need plates. So you make things, you make the things that you need, and then that's taken to another level where you go, well, actually they don't just have to be cups and bowls, they can be beautiful cups and bowls. We can make them lovely because like that's what we deserve. This is not just about survival, this is about thriving. So I see folk art as and that also includes drag, where people come together and they're talking about the issues that they're dealing with, specifically in the LGBTQIA plus community, of a shared feelings and experiences, and out of that they create something where they are allowed to be themselves and express that also to the world.
From working with Dr. Lucy Wright, who is a folk art researcher, we've learned loads about the history of how folk art has been collected previously, and learned, I think, about mistakes that we don't want to replicate when we're looking at our own folk art of drag. As Britain became more industrialised, there was this real interest in particularly rural folk art, and that interest came from largely middle and upper class people and institutions, really sort of extractively researching cultures of working class people. So now in England there's still this idea that folk art is sort of a middle class pursuit, when actually pretty much the opposite's true. You know, we're communities who are researching our own histories, and I think that's really important. And also just really beautiful.
I would say that folk art is any means of expression that communicates an idea, a thought of a community. And what is drag? Well, drag is how a lot of queer people present themselves and perform. In wider culture, we're not allowed to have. We're not allowed to represent ourselves. We're not allowed to exist, quite fucking frankly. So it's just nice to have a place where we can be experimental and do our thing. And why is drag folk art? Because it's art of the people, right? It's where we can be ourselves and be proud and be exactly what we want to be, and let other fucking people see that. And that's why I would say drag is folk art. Woo woo!
We made a world for us, a place to be, built with love, play and beauty, a space to forge memories, where we get both what we want and what we need, and the drive to be remembered gets stronger every day, 'cause folk, they see us and believe the words we say. We're here to celebrate and share, and as for the crowds who went for the cheering, we forget to live. Hold me up, 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 yeah. Hold me up, 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 yeah.
This project is being funded by Historic England's Everyday Heritage Grant Programme, celebrating working class histories.